Good evening. Adam and Kalea, could you please give the invocation?
Holy Spirit, God, we just welcome you in this place, God. We thank you so much for who you are, God. We love you. We praise you, Father. We lift your name high above all else, God. We thank you, Lord, for your love. Jesus, we pray for wisdom, God, and guidance on every single decision that is made tonight, God. We thank you, Lord, for the city of Freeport, Jesus, and every single individual that is here, Father. We thank you, Lord, that those, God, that you've appointed, Jesus, to be here, Lord. We love you. We thank you for this night, God. We pray, Lord, for blind spots to be removed, and anything, God, that areas where maybe we don't see, God, give us direction, spiritual, supernatural wisdom and knowledge, and open up our eyes to what you see, Jesus, and get us out of the way, God, so that you can have your way.
And we just pray that as they make decisions tonight, that you would just lead that, God, you would make the decisions for them, that they would already have the thoughts to what they need to do, help them have the wisdom they need for tonight with everything that they're going to be talking about. And in your name, amen.
Thank you very much. Now that it is 6 o'clock, we'll officially call this regular meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderperson Borneman is absent. Present. Alderperson Monroe.
Present.
Ross.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Busker.
Here.
Shadle.
Here.
Misick.
Here.
And Berberet.
Here.
Thank you. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. It was to be led by Alderman Borneman, but Alderman Monroe, would you mind?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Doesn't matter, give it to.
Okay, we have Alderman Busker and seconded by Alderman Berberet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting from June 21st, 2021. However, there was a typo at the bottom of page 3. It says Manager Busker. It should actually say Manager Bucus. So with that amendment on there, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Ross, seconded by Alderman Shadle. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Public comment. Alan, I see that you signed in. Is this on the Airbnbs? No? Okay, so then it'll have to wait until the end? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. All the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature unless there's a member of the council who would like to have something removed for further discussion. Is there anything, council? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of approving to receive and place on file the minutes of the board and commission minutes from the Foreign Fire Insurance Board from April 8th, 2021, the Greater Freeport Partnership Monthly Report dated June 23rd, 2021, the building permit reports for June 2021, the approval of the finance bills payable in the total of $1,532,830.94, and the approval of payroll for the pay period ending June 19th, 2021, in the total of $546,255.60, and the revised Festival District schedule for 2021. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Parker. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman.
Aye.
Monroe.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Shadle.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
And Berberet.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
And let the record show at 6:04, Alderman Borneman joined us. Next is item number 5, which is recognition of service awards. Madam Clerk, could you please read these for the record?
Fred Wedig from the Public Works/Water Department of 40 years, Shelley Russell in Finance for 30 years, and Brian Polich in Police for 20 years.
Thank you. Manager Bucus.
Thank you, Your Honor. I really have nothing to add other than the fact that we appreciate their years of service. And I just talked to Fred this morning, and he's planning on at least another 5 years. So we wish him well in that regard as well. But our 3 employees could not make it tonight, and so they'll get their awards by their department heads.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 6 is the second reading of ordinance 2021-22. Could you please read this?
Ordinance to accept properties from tax trustee sales.
Thank you. Director Hines.
Thank you. So since I think a few members were gone at the last meeting, I'll give a little bit of an overview again. So we identified 19 properties from the county tax trustee sale that we feel we should purchase and take off of the tax sale. There are 14 that are these properties are condemned, and they've been deemed dangerous and unsafe. They're all vacant properties, and so most of these we would like to purchase to demolish, and we will use the abandoned properties program funds that we just got from IDA, and then there are several properties that we think could be repurposed through the Northern Illinois Land Bank program, and so we'll work with the Land Bank to get that done as well. And then there are 6 properties that are they're just outside of city limits, but they're within the floodway, and so we would like to purchase those to annex them. To add to the existing floodway area, the open green space. I can take any questions.
Director Hines, how many of those properties do you anticipate going to the land bank?
I think we could do about 4 of the 14.
14? So you had 5 that were outside of the city limits? Is that
So there are 19 total. There are 14 that are condemned properties. But I think out of those 14, we could probably do about 4 through the land bank, and so most likely would have to demolish about 10 of them. We might find out that some of these are in a little bit better shape than they look on the outside or something, so we may be able to repurpose some of them through the land bank still, but I think it would be safe to say about 4. And then there are the 6 properties they're vacant lots just outside of the city limits.
Thank you. Questions, council?
Mayor?
Alderman Ross?
Yes, Director. Excuse me. The ones that were in the floodway, are they on there?
Yes, yeah, there's a few, I think they're mostly on Albert Avenue. Yeah, they're all on Albert Avenue. They don't actually have addresses. There's one that's labeled 6 South Albert, but they're all vacant lots. I think if you go over there, yeah, I think some of them have some just kind of random junk on it, but I think they're all vacant otherwise.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2021-22?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Misick,
Aye.
and Berberay.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 7 is the second reading of ordinance 2021-23. Could you please read this?
Ordinance approving special use permit for cannabis craft growing at 103 to 111 South Liberty.
Thank you. Director Hines.
Thank you. So I'll just give a brief overview of this again. We had gotten an application from Green Healthcare Solutions, Inc., or GHSI, for a cannabis craft growing facility at the Raleigh building that's addressed 103 to 111 South Liberty Avenue. The zoning board had a public hearing on June 3rd. We didn't have any objectors present, and I didn't receive any letters of opposition for the project. We received 1 letter of support from from Pete Alber, the building owner of the Raleigh building that's just south of this one. Both the zoning board recommended approval of this application and the planning commission with a few contingencies. So one being that they get their state cannabis license. The other being that the council approves the purchase agreement with the company to buy the property from us, and then that the special use is specific to this company, so that if there were another company to come in, that they would still have to go through and get the same approval.
Questions? Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the second reading of ordinance 2021-23?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Meiser,
No.
and Berbere.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 7-1.
Thank you. Item number 8 is the second reading of ordinance 2021-24. Could you please read this?
Ordinance revising Chapter 857 meeting halls.
Thank you. Manager Bucus.
Thank you, Your Honor. On November 2nd of 2020, the City Council adopted ordinance number 2020-55 regulating meeting halls. Staff's major concern with meeting halls is parking oversight, crowd management, and occupancy. And the meeting hall ordinance that was approved met this criteria. Since that time, City Council has discussed this issue at four separate meetings. There was concern about the Tier 1, which includes taverns, restaurants, packaged goods sales, and Tier 2, the wine and bar sales, be exempt from meeting hall licensing requirements. The proposed ordinance tonight, ordinance number 2021-24, I believe meets those requests of City Council. Also, in our discussions, we talked about the fees that would be required of meeting hall licenses. The original ordinance had meeting hall licenses at $100 per year. This amended ordinance calls for the first year to be $100, and then any renewal would be $25 per year.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on ordinance 2021-24?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
No.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Meiser,
Aye.
and Berbere.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 7-1.
Item number 9 is the second reading of ordinance 2021-26. Could you please read this?
Ordinance approving special use permit for a vacation rental at 1650 West Apache Trail.
Thank you. Director Hines?
Thanks. So this is the special use application that we received for a bed and breakfast at 1650 West Apache Trail. We had, after consideration of the LaSalle Sinclair factors and our special use standards, we did recommend approval of this special use, but just with a condition that they have no more than 2 vehicles at the property at one time, so there's not an influx of people or parties or something at the property. At the zoning board public hearing, we did have one objector present who had also written in comment to us, who gave us a copy of, or who had stated that there were subdivision covenants that didn't allow businesses in the neighborhood. And so we did actually get a copy of those from the owner of the property. She had them with her, and it did state that their businesses aren't allowed in the neighborhood. And we don't normally look up subdivision covenants, and we don't normally, and we don't enforce them. We don't have the authority to enforce them. So it was a little odd that we were to receive them and see it, really, because it is the job of the neighborhood, the residents, to enforce those rules. The zoning board did recommend approval of this special use, and they also added that contingency that they get that there are 2 guest cars per stay. And they did add a contingency to confirm that the subdivision covenants allow the proposed use. And then Planning Commission, they actually voted against approving the proposed use, having seen the subdivision covenants for this. Since our original recommendation would be to approve this, we would like to just leave it to council to determine whether you'd like to enforce the subdivision covenants or would like to allow the residents to do that within their own neighborhood.
Discussion. No, Alderman Borneman?
Director, I may be thinking of the next item, but I thought the covenant, or what I thought to be the covenant, said no businesses unless permitted by the city council.
So it states that it has to be a permitted use, so since this is a special use, then that technically would not be permitted. The language, it confused me at first as well, but the way that it's written, it would have to be already listed as a permitted use.
Madam Mayor.
Busker?
Yeah, probably a little late in the game here for this one, but what would it take to make this part of the permitted uses? Because these Airbnbs they're popping up all over the place, so I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last time that we see this. So I think if we're gonna consider it for these places, we need to have a little more kind of a uniform system of handling this instead of, piecemeal. All right, who's gonna get to do it and who's not? So, I don't know how we go about doing that, but I think I'm in favor of this. I just want to make sure that someone doesn't open up their business and then get slapped with a lawsuit by a couple neighbors, and then they're out money. So.
Manager Bucus, have you thought about permit versus special permit?
We have not, Your Honor, but we could always put it before the Plan Commission and have them come back with a recommendation.
And they are required to get a license in addition to the special use permit, so they're getting one form of review through the license program, which would, that requires the inspections and everything. The special use is really just consideration to the location and being able to take that to council. So we could add it as a permitted use and it would still be reviewed by staff.
And I certainly agree with Manager Bucus that ultimately if the council wants to have this item or this question about permitted use, making it an outright permitted use, go back to planning or to ZBA to get their input on it, that's a good idea. Just a couple of thoughts there, though, just generally speaking. With a special use permit, at least you do have that added measure of control as a city council. You're able to look at every single application on a case-by-case basis there. If you make it an outright permitted use and you say, well, as a council, let's say you go through hypothetically and say, well, these are Airbnbs, right? So they're typically in a residential area, right? Because you start with either a single-family home or some sort of a two-family there, and you're going to make it a permitted use, then it means any property in any part of the city is going to be able to use their house as an Airbnb or VRBO or whatever it is, and that's permitted as right. They don't have to come back before you. You as a council don't get to at least examine their particular application and say it makes sense in this particular house or this particular two-family or whatever it is. I think where this particular situation deviates a little bit is these specific codes, covenants, and restrictions that are specific to just this neighborhood. Now, I won't speak to every single neighborhood in Freeport because we don't know, right? But, some will have their own CCRs. Some may not even have CCRs. Some of them that do have CCRs might not have this restriction to say that you can't operate a business other than those that are permitted by ordinance in there. So just some things to think about, but, generally speaking, when you're talking about maybe allowing for some sort of a commercial business component in a residential neighborhood, generally speaking, having a special use permit process is probably a smart thing to give you guys at least some oversight on each particular case.
Mayor?
Sorry, one more thing. That being said, as Director Hines did mention, typically in all my communities, I would not recommend that the city get involved in enforcing what's a contractual relationship. So CCRs are a contract between people that own property within that subdivision there. And I have typically advised all my municipal clients that that is not an area that we want to get into enforcing a contract between two private parties.
Alderman Borneman?
Director, could you walk us through the Planning Commission's reasoning again on their vote?
It was mainly the subdivision covenants and not wanting to approve something that if this person bought a house with possibly with the understanding that they couldn't have a business in there, so they didn't want to approve that. I do think that the homeowner, I'm not sure that she or either of the homeowners had seen the covenants before this. They had gotten a copy from a neighbor, because they did not move into their home when the neighborhood was built. They moved in later on, so some of these covenants get lost between changes of ownership too.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Ross?
yes, Director, would this be kind of considered like a bed and breakfast?
Yep. Yeah, so by our code definition, that we have bed and breakfasts and then vacation rentals. And the bed and breakfast is when the homeowner lives on the property and then rents out space for short stays. And a vacation rental is if you're renting out a home or an apartment for the short stays. So if it's separate from your living space, then that would be the vacation. But this is bed and breakfast.
Thank you.
Director, are the owners required to charge that tax just like hotels?
Yes, yeah, they have the 5% hotel motel tax too.
Alderman Borneman?
Yeah, sorry to keep talking here, but the agenda item says permit for vacation rental. Is that inaccurate? Should it say for bed and breakfast?
It probably should say bed and breakfast.
Is there a distinct
That was
thing?
my overlooking.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, I guess I have a question for council. Should we make a motion to amend that?
Alderman Borneman, I think you were looking at the staff report, right? Where it references vacation rental.
On the agenda that I have that I picked up front, number 9, says special use permit for vacation rental. This is 1650 West Apache Trail. Is that right?
Right. So were you talking about making, because the ordinance itself does talk about a bed and breakfast. So the terminology is accurate in the ordinance that you guys are considering. So it does use the term operation of a bed and breakfast establishment at 1650 Apache Trail.
Great.
There. So it's right in the ordinance there. I'm not terribly concerned about the actual wording on the agenda as much,
Okay, thank you.
as long as the ordinance is right.
Alderman Monroe, did you have something?
Yes, ma'am. So what are the tax implications of this? So there's a 5% tax that you would get with the rental. What about the property taxes and such? How would that change?
I'm not entirely sure what it would do to the property taxes, but there's some evidence of some communities that it's increased property taxes or property values, having vacation rentals or Airbnbs available, but that's probably a handful of places where that's happened, and it's larger cities. So I can't say for certain what it would do to a neighborhood in Freeport.
Follow-up, have we asked anybody in the community that lives in that residential area? And what's the feedback generally?
So we're, as part of the special use process, that we're required to, they have to post a sign on their property, so they did that, and then send out mailing notices to all of the properties that are adjacent to or across the street from their house. And so every one of their neighbors did get something, and then people driving by could see that sign. And we did get, for this one, we got a few letters in objection, and then one letter of support.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Alderman Chadle.
Director, is there any wording in these special use permits to have any recourse should this become a wild party house? I mean, it's written in there, let's only have 2 guest vehicles, but we all know things happen. You know, here comes a bunch of people. Is there anything in there to revoke this? Should that be an issue?
So where that will come in would be more of the license, and I think we could set some sort of standard on the special use, but the license requires that we get do an inspection for occupancy limits. And Aaron or Attorney Zito, you can add something.
So there is the license, but then by nature, special use permits can be revoked by the city council. So there is a hearing process, typically. So you have to, if someone violates a terms or condition of their special use, then you would bring them back before the zoning board typically. The zoning board would then kind of serve as a judge to determine was a violation, did it occur, and then whether or not to, permanently revoke or maybe just suspend their special use permit. There they make a recommendation. Then I think, and I haven't looked at specifically in Freeport's, but in a lot of my communities, then it goes to the city council for the final decision on whether or not to suspend or revoke. So there is a mechanism.
I think that gives some good clarity on that. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2021-26?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
No.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
Berbere.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-1.
Item number 10 is the second reading of ordinance 2021-27. Could you please read this?
One moment, please. Ordinance approving special use permit for a vacation rental at 1851 Indian Springs.
Thank you. Director Hines.
So this is the same situation. We had gotten the special use application from the owners of 1851 Indian Springs Court to operate an Airbnb, and it's the same situation. It's out of their basement. They live in the home. And we wouldn't normally look up the covenants, but since we did receive them for the other home, we did end up looking them up, and it had the same exact language in there. So for this, the zoning board recommended approval with those same restrictions of limiting the 2 guest cars per stay and approval of the subdivision covenants, and then the planning commission, they voted approval on that same recommendation. So we would, our original recommendation would be to approve this with that limit of 2 guest cars per stay, and we would leave it to the council to decide if you would like to approve it, knowing that the subdivision covenants don't allow businesses.
Any other discussion, council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the passage of ordinance 2021-27?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker, Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
and Berbere.
Aye.
The ordinance passes 8-0.
Item number 11 is the first reading of ordinance 2021-28. Could you please read this?
Ordinance amending section 480.22 and 480.24, handicap persons and disabled veterans, to add a handicap parking space on Van Buren, on the southeast corner of Van Buren and Exchange.
Thank you. Director Boyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. Earlier this spring, Comprehensive Prosthetics and Orthotics opened a new location at 15 North Van Buren in the former Hometown Realtors Building. Matt Klein, the certified orthotist, has requested additional disabled parking in front of the business. It appears to be appropriate to go ahead and do so based upon the fact that they create a lot of value and offer a lot of products and services for the disabled community. So I am requesting passage of ordinance 2021-28 to convert a 15-minute convenience parking into disabled parking.
Discussion? Alderman Parker?
I'll make a motion to move that forward. Second.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker?
actually,
Yeah, I
Alderman Shadle.
had a quick comment.
Alderman Shadle?
That, I'm taking it that was a 15-minute loading zone
15-minute convenience.
right in front of
Yeah.
the building, and they
Yes.
just want to change that to a handicap.
Right. And we've talked to them about leaving it. Maybe that would be more appropriate, but they felt strongly they wanted to. And it takes them a little bit longer than 15 minutes to do their business, so it makes sense.
Correct. In their business, I understand.
Alderman Busker?
Yes. Are they open for business right now?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, so we had a motion on the floor made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Ross to move ordinance 2021-28 onto the next regularly scheduled meeting. And we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Parker for suspension of the rules. Suspension of the rules is non-debatable and was passed by a 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on suspension?
Borneman,
Aye.
McClanathan,
Aye.
sorry, Peter. Monroe, Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Mysick,
Aye.
and Berberay.
Aye.
The suspension passes 8-0.
So now before you, council, is the approval of ordinance 2021-28 for its final passage. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Mysick,
Aye.
and Berberay.
Aye.
And the ordinance passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 12 is the adoption of Resolution 2021-30. Could you please read this?
I'm sorry, I'm out of place. What item number are we on?
12.
12? Resolution authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Freeport Park District to provide city police department services at various parks.
Thank you. Chief Summers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just a way to formalize reimbursement with the police department from the park district when they need additional law enforcement as a presence in the park. There's been some incidents of disorderly subjects at the Little League baseball games, the pool, or the skate park, where we've had to spend additional time there. The park district, like us, has had problems recruiting officers to come and work there. So the park director reached out to see if there's any way we could come up with an agreement to help them out. This will ease the burden on our shifts if we're there ahead of time before the problem starts, to mitigate those problems before they start. We both agree, the park district and myself, that this will probably be used very little, but when we needed it this year, it wasn't there. So this will put a mechanism in place. They understand that they will reimburse our officers at their overtime rate, and they're accepting of that. And it's just, we are not going to force our officers to work. We'll put a sign up, and if they volunteer to take those hours, it's not traditionally with normal policing issues that we have, we will force officers to come back and work if there's something that we need. This won't be the situation. It'll all be voluntary for the officers to come in, so they won't put an undue burden on those officers either.
Alderman Ross?
Yes, Chief. I know they have a park ranger at this time. He rides around the van. But as I remember, they used to have regular park officers that worked every day.
They do. They're trying to reestablish that program. Just right now that they don't have the number of officers to cover that on a consistent basis. So in those periods when they don't have somebody there and they know that there could be a problem, they know that there's an event going on, they could reach out to us ahead of time and see if we can get somebody to come out there and just be present.
In other words, they'll have more manpower.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Mysick?
Chief, if memory serves me correctly, we've had such an arrangement like this in the past. Is that correct?
We have not. Our officers have normally worked for the Park District Police. However, they were never reimbursed or paid at the city rate. This would be the only thing that's different, is they would still be our police officer. They'd be in our uniform. We still have jurisdiction over those community parks that are inside the city, but it would not be as a Park District employee. It would be as a City of Freeport Police Department employee.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Madam Mayor?
Alderman Busker?
Yes. I move to adopt Resolution 2021-30.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Parker. Is there any further discussion, council? Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Mysick,
Aye.
and Berberay.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 13 is the adoption of Resolution 2021-31. Could you please read this?
Resolution authorizing and approving a facade improvement grant agreement for the property located at 16 South Chicago Avenue.
Thank you. Director Hines.
Thank you. So in April of this year, council had approved a resolution to award the facade improvement grants to 11 properties downtown, including 16 South Chicago. This owner was awarded $10,899.50 in the reimbursable grant program. His project included removing panels on the brick awning, reconstructing a storefront, adding 2 new windows and a new stairwell door, 3 new second floor windows, adding crown molding and cornice, restoring the Luxfer glass on the main floor, and then installing a new overhang sign. The total project was going to cost over $21,000. So with the taking off the metal siding that was on his building, he wasn't sure whether or not those windows on the second floor were going to be arched or just rectangle windows, and they are arched, and so this has drastically increased the cost of purchasing new windows for the building. So he would like to purchase vinyl windows, which it is discouraged for historic buildings to put in vinyl windows, but the cost difference is going to be at least $1,500 to purchase the aluminum versus the vinyl windows. And so we suggested that if he would like to adjust some of his expenses, that we could cover something different, since most of the cost of construction is increased right now. So he had changed out some of his expenses and added to the storefront windows and reduced the amount of the second floor windows to still be able to purchase those vinyl windows that are a little bit more affordable. Do we have any questions about that?
Alderman Shadle.
These are just the second floor windows that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Alderman Berberet.
Thank you, Mayor. Director, just a question of interest. Once the property owner finished the improvement, does the city go back and inspect to see that the work was done according to what the plan was?
Yes, yeah, we do. So we, once they're done with the work, and they do have a building permit too, so we'll do the inspection as part of the building permit. But we require that they get an inspection before we can issue facade reimbursement. So
Okay.
we do an inspection, we have to get all of the checks, invoices, receipts for all payments, and then we would reimburse.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your
Madam
pleasure, Council? Alderman Busker.
Make a motion to adopt resolution
Second.
31.
Is there a second? Alderman Monroe? All right, we have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Monroe for the adoption of Resolution 2021-31. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman.
Aye.
Monroe.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Parker. Busker.
Aye.
Shadle.
Aye.
Meissick.
Aye.
And Berberet.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
And item number 14 is the adoption of Resolution 2021-32. Could you please read this?
Resolution approving mausoleum bid.
Director Boyer.
Thank you, Your Honor. The city maintains a 26-acre cemetery. Among the things that we take care of, we maintain the headstones, driving lanes, we do tree care and trimming and removal, structure maintenance. This includes not only our equipment garage, but there are several mausoleums at the cemetery. One of them, the J.B. Taylor Mausoleum, is in poor shape. The roof has failed, and it's been quite a number of years, so it's urgent that we get it back on. Otherwise, it's going to cause more problems to the structure. So we want to make sure we get this taken care of as quickly as we can. The staff's received 4 proposals from Heister, Moss Roofing, Freeport Industrial, and Quinn. Quinn came in at the lowest cost at $16,500. The funding was budgeted for this year to have the roof replaced, and staff's requesting council approve the Quinn construction proposal.
Alderman Shadle?
What's the material that we're using on this
It's gonna be shingle, asphalt shingle.
with life expectancy?
I mean, you're looking at 30 to 40 years, but, you know,
I,
they're gonna be rebuilding the truss system and everything, cause the thing's
Right,
completely gone.
but they rate shingles in
Yeah.
different thicknesses. Are we getting the 40-year shingle or
Yes,
20-year?
40-year shingle, I believe.
Okay.
Mayor. Director Boyer, in regard to Alderman Shadle, do you consider a steel roof compared to the regular shingles?
Yeah, Alderman, with the increase in material costs this year, this is our lowest cost option, so if,
Okay.
that was more along the lines, we need to get this thing done, and we didn't have a very large budget last year. We budgeted, for this, and we weren't thinking about what it was gonna cost for the material increase, so.
Thank you, Director.
Director, how soon would this be able to get started?
As soon as we can approve that, we can move forward with it, starting tomorrow.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker?
yeah, this might be a question for finance, but, is there a reason why we haven't set up a, perpetual care fund for this cemetery? You know, these places, building a mausoleum, you know, a roof should be replaced before it goes bad. I don't know if we've got one or how we could get something going for that, so we're not.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Manager Bucus.
Yes, we do have a perpetual care fund, and we do have monies in there. Generally, we'd use the interest on there when we have to do something to it, but it's my understanding that when the care fund was established, council at that time set a restriction that we cannot use any funds out of it. The problem with the mausoleum right now with the roof is something that was put off year after year after year because we didn't have enough finances. We thought we did this year as well. We budgeted, I believe it was only $15,000 for this project, thinking we had more than enough money in it. But, you know, lumber costs have gone up 5 times in this past year, and 5 times what they were a year ago. And so that's why we're recommending we go with Quinn, and with an asphalt roof and not a steel roof, because steel roof would last a lot longer. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that mausoleum, and we did have a problem getting bids on it because it needs a lot of work.
I make a motion to adopt resolution, 2021-32.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross. Any further discussion? Yeah, Alderman Borneman?
Yeah, Manager Bucus, you said when that fund was established, the council said we couldn't use funds out of it. Did you mean to go towards anything other than cemetery care?
It's my understanding we can't use it for anything. Other places I work, we always use the interest to pay for things like this and let the you know, the principal build. So that's something we're looking at, because there's going to be a lot more work that needs to be done out there.
Well, I'm confused. There's a fund.
There's a fund that we can't use because council said we can't use it.
Do you understand my confusion then?
How did it get funded?
Sorry?
How did it get funded, if I could ask?
Oh, no, we charge people.
Oh, we
for
charge,
the
okay, sorry.
perpetual care fund, and then we put the money in there, and the restriction is we cannot use it. Other place I worked, we had a restriction, but you can only use the principal because in years coming up, you know, there's no income coming into the cemetery. So whatever your perpetual care fund has, that's where you have to make your money. Cemeteries don't make money. They're a cost to every city. And we even had a proprietor that wanted to give us one of their cemeteries, and I said no, because the long term, it's going to cost us a fortune, even though they had $500,000 in their perpetual care fund. It doesn't do any good. So what we need to do is, if you want to use that money to pay for things like this out of perpetual care fund, you need to adjust your ordinance.
So, what are people paying for then? And when they contribute to this fund?
They're paying for long-term care of the cemetery, but we've been using general fund money to do it.
Well, I think we found problem that we could probably fix.
Definitely, definitely.
Thanks.
Well said.
Madam Mayor? Well, I guess,
Alderman Busker.
I don't know if I guess bring it up for discussion before the vote, because I don't know if we can afterwards, but, you know, can we get that ordinance brought to the table for discussion?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, that's all I have.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Ross. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle, Meissick,
Aye.
and Berberet.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted 8-0.
Item number 15 is a motion to appoint a chair and a vice chair of the Finance Committee of the Whole. Manager Bucus?
Thank you, Your Honor. The City Council has a standing finance committee that meets when we have financial situations like we just talked about. And then they make and it's presented before the full City Council. Generally, this committee meets when we're talking about the budget and meeting with the different, with the city manager, different department heads and those issues. The past Finance Committee chairman and vice chairman have left the City Council, and this is the first City Council meeting we've had where we had the full City Council in attendance. And so I'm recommending that council, appoint or elect, I should say, chairman and vice chairman for the Finance Committee, because we do have the budget coming up starting in September, and we'll be getting pretty busy at that time.
So we'll start with nominations for chair.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker.
I nominate Alderperson at Large James Berberet for the chair position.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations just for chair? Seeing no other nominations, that will move us to a motion. Is there a motion to appoint Alderman Berberet as the chairman?
So moved.
We have a motion made by Alderman Parker, seconded by Alderman Monroe. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the appointment of Alderman Berberet as chairman of the Finance Committee of the Whole?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle, Meissick,
Aye.
and Berberet.
Do I abstain or say aye?
You can vote for yourself.
I can vote for myself? Okay.
Yeah.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, then now we'll take nominations for the vice chair.
Your Honor,
Alderman
I'd
Parker?
like to nominate Alderman Monroe for vice chair.
Second. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't need a second, but are there any other nominations for the vice chair? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the, no, I'm sorry, I need a motion to appoint the vice chair as Alderman Monroe.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Meissick, seconded by Alderman Ross for the appointment of the vice chair as Alderman Monroe. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle, Meissick,
Aye.
and Berberet.
Aye.
The motion passes 8-0. Mayor, do I need who nominated Alderperson Berberet? Going backwards, was that Busker?
That was Busker.
Okay, thank you.
Did you get all the rest of them then?
I got the rest, thank you.
Okay. Item number 16 is a motion to approve the Chicago Avenue Streetscape Plan that was revised. Director Hines.
Okay. So in 2017, the city contracted Winter Design to create a concept plan to help realize the streetscape goals for Chicago Avenue. The concept plan was approved by council in fall of 2017, and at that time, the city anticipated that the project would be completed in phases over a longer period of time. I think it was about 5 or plus years, depending on funding. But we plan to seek state and federal grants and loans to help move the project along. And then in 2020, the city applied for the DCEO Opportunity Zone grant when that became available, and we were awarded that in 2021. So we're turning a 5+ year project into 1 year. So we have a few different goals with the Chicago Avenue Streetscape project. This is to improve and modernize the infrastructure on Chicago Avenue, create complete streets by modifying street cross-sections to accommodate bikes, alter intersections, and curb extensions to support pedestrians, and install recommended street furnishings. And then to accommodate multiple modes of traffic, increase pedestrian safety, define pedestrian paths of travel, and enhance aesthetics of intersections through curb extensions, places of rest, art, and information and wayfinding signage. The grant award is $1.9 million and requires the match of $1.9 million. The project funds will be used for mainly infrastructure removal and replacement, and adding things like signage, trees that are fitting for a downtown space, and lights. And so the project is anticipated to start in May and to be completed by the end of 2022. And so for discussion, so in partnership with the Greater Freeport Partnership and Fair Graham, the city has held 3 meetings with downtown businesses and building owners who are located on Chicago Ave. So we've had 2 in May, and then we just had 1 last week on June 30th. And during the 2 public meetings that we held in May, downtown businesses and building owners raised some concerns about the removal of parking on the east side of Chicago Avenue. And so after these discussions and after receiving feedback from council at the June COW, we worked on some alternative options that would align with the business owner and building owners' vision and our Chicago Avenue streetscape goals. So on June 30th, we discussed 3 alternate options, and so those are up here, and everyone should have a copy of those options in front of you too. So the current design, this is the 11.5-foot sidewalks, 6-foot bike lanes, designated bike lanes on the east and west side of the street, 11-foot drive lanes, 8-foot parking on the west side, and it would maintain the 66-foot right-of-way. So to compare to this, our current setup, it's 66-foot right-of-way, but currently our sidewalks are at 12 feet, parking is at 9 feet on either side, and drive lanes are at 12. And then option 1, or alternate 1, we kept parking on both sides, expanded the sidewalks to create them, so those are 12.5, and again in comparison, they're currently 12 feet. So this alternate 1 has 12.5-foot sidewalks, 8-foot parking lane, and then 12 feet of shared drive and bicycle lane. So it would just have painting within the side of the drive lane, on the right side of the drive lane, to designate a space for bikes to ride on, but they would be riding in the same lane as the vehicles. And then alternate 2, we again kept parking on both sides of the road. Sidewalks are at 11.5 feet. Parking is at 7.5 feet. There's a shared lane on the east side of the road, and then that's 11-foot drive lane that's shared with cyclists, and then 11-foot drive lane on the west side with a 5-foot designated bike lane. And so with this side, with this alternate number 2, what we're looking at is still creating that safe designated bike lane for cyclists to go down the street, and cars to, for both cyclists and cars to avoid each other. And then we have created sort of a connection where, or just an option really, where if we did have this designated bike lane, the last image that you have in the packet shows that we could connect the designated bike path going south on Chicago Avenue, connect it to Jackson Street, and then go north down Van Buren Avenue. And we looked at the width. We wouldn't have to change any parking or anything. We would still be able to keep parking on Van Buren and Jackson and still have that designated bike lane on both of those spaces. And then that would connect people back that would take them downtown, then connect them back to the bike path from Van Buren. Okay. So by the end of the meeting, 7 participants were interested in alternative 2, 6 were interested in 1, and 5 were interested in the current design. We reached out to any business and building owners who weren't able to make the meeting to try and get input from them, and ask that they just respond by the 5th to give me time to put everything together today for you tonight. And so we did end up getting 6 people for the current design, 10 for alternate 1, and then 9 for alternate 2. So from a staff perspective, we still think that having those designated bike lanes on either side of the road are the safest option for both cyclists and for drivers, to be able to use the road space together. But based on these, having these different options in front of the business and building owners, we do think that having the alternate 2, where we have 1 designated bike lane, is a good compromise to still having that parking space on either side of the road, but then having a safe lane for someone to go down the street. And then if we were to connect that to Jackson and go back down Van Buren, it would be a minimal cost of just painting and adding that to help direct people, and then eventually adding signage and working it together with a whole long-term bicycle plan for the city. I can take any questions for this.
On alternate 2, you've got that extra bike lane going down Van Buren. Is that an actual lane or is it shared?
So we were looking at, and this is just an idea, we were looking at if we had alternate 2, having the designated bike lane go, so it would go south down Chicago, west down Jackson, and then shoot back up north on Van Buren Street. So we could have it designated throughout that whole space. So it would be like a painted path that just takes you to and from the bike path on Van Buren and into our downtown.
Your Honor,
Yes.
we're also thinking that by putting it on the west side, we would not be interfering as much with the drop-off boxes at the post office. There'll still have to be some adjustments made, but hopefully we could keep the mailboxes where they are.
So I see in alternate 2, you have the main bike lane. It also shows on the east side of the street, like the arrows with the bike. That's how that would look. They'd be on both sides.
Yeah. So we would still have on the east side, it would be a shared lane, so people could still go up and down Chicago Avenue either way. But we would just create that the designated lane on the west side to have a space for people to come down a little bit more easily. But I know there are people who are comfortable riding in shared lanes, so if they wanted to just quickly turn around down Chicago Avenue and go the other way, they could do that.
So just so I have the numbers right, you counted 11 in favor. So we're talking about businesses who responded, right? 11 were in favor of the current design, 16 were in favor of the alternate, and 16 alternate 1, and 16 were in favor of alternate 2.
So we have 6 that are in favor of the current design, 10 for alternate 1, and then 9 for alternate 2.
All right.
I was not able to get a hold of every single person. We had a meeting scheduled today with someone. They didn't show up. So we didn't get feedback from everyone, but from most of the business and building owners, we did.
Alderman Verberay?
Just an observation, Dr. Hines, that alternate 1 and alternate 2, both of which have parking on both sides of the streets, a total of 19 versus 6, which has parking only on one side of the street. So it's obvious most of the business community wants to go with parking on both sides of the street. As a non-bike rider, I have no preference as to whether it's a shared lane or a designated lane. So is that distinction something that can be future decided, or is the grant dependent on that, or is there a better way to figure out what's the best way to go since the preponderance is parking on both sides?
So part of this, we will have to make a request for a scope of work modification to DCEO, just to change. We had listed in our scope of work that we were adding in the designated bike lanes on both sides. So it would be a minor change. It's really aesthetics. But the biggest thing is that with alternate 1 versus 2, it would change our engineering plan. So we would like to get that basically decided as soon as possible, so we can get the engineering plans finalized and ready for bid, because the Alternate 1 has 12.5-foot sidewalks. Alternate 2 has 11.5. So it would change the sidewalk width, the bump out width. So we would just need to get that figured out before we do any bidding.
Thank you.
Alderman Shadle?
I believe Stevenson Street is painted with shared lanes and Main Street as well.
Yes.
So there'd be a couple of places that there could be going from a safe lane around the corner and back to Van Buren,
Yep.
get back to the safe lane that way too,
Mhm.
as options for the cyclists that did want to make sure they stayed in the safe lane. It would be a minor
Mhm.
one block.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Mayor,
Alderman Ross?
okay, getting back to, alternate number 1. As for the safety, one thing I'm looking at is if a car door opens. I'm thinking that if the car door is open, the bicycle still got more time to get out of the way of the car door, because the parking lane for the vehicle has a little bit more room to move over to the curb than, well, we got a foot, to move over to the curb compared to, alternate number 2, where the bike lane is right there. Yeah, he probably still could move, but I'm thinking that my own preference would be alternate number 1. I know the bike lane here, as showing, is cosmetic, true enough, but as Alderman Borderman had said before, there's a shared roadway anyway with the bike share the road with the vehicles. So with that being said, and this way, if we went with 1, we don't lose any parking, correct, with 1?
No.
What about, do we lose any parking with any of them? 2 or 3?
Only the current design. The 2 new alternates that were that we brought up, those both have parking on the east and west side.
Okay, so with 1, 2, and 3, we don't lose parking, correct?
Well, yeah, just 1 and 2. Yep.
With
That's
1
correct.
and 2? Okay, so, yeah, I would probably be happy to see that we don't lose any parking and go from there. But what about the mailboxes down there by the post office?
So with alternate 1 or 2, there may have to be minor changes to where the mailboxes are located, but we think that with either of those options, we can make it work, and it won't be too different from what it currently is.
Follow up. Are we speaking of minor change? Are we speaking of just leaving the mailboxes there and having to move it in, or move them all together?
Well, they'll have to remove them when they're doing all of the work, so then when they do put them back in, it may have to be moved and adjusted a little bit to fit with the new, either if we're expanding or reducing the sidewalk widths, and it would just have to be adjusted accordingly.
Okay, the sidewalk on the east side of the road,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Busker?
I guess my question might be, I don't know if Fire Chief could answer this, or what's the number of responses we've had to vehicle versus bicycle accidents on the shared bike paths we have now, as opposed to what would be a designated bike lane? I mean, I can't see there being that much traffic on Chicago to have a designated lane.
There's no way for me to be able to provide that data right now. I'd have to research that.
That's unacceptable.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Alderman Berberet?
Thank you, Director Hines. If we went with alternate 1, would that allow us to still go around on Jackson and back up Van Buren with shared space for bikes?
Yeah, certainly. We could still paint on the shared.
And whether we go
lanes onto it.
shared or not, when it comes around Jackson and back up Van Buren, is that going to be redone, reworked, repaved at some point in the future? as
So,
part of-
yeah, we have applied for funding to micro surface the downtown street. So if we are able to secure that funding for, I believe next year, then we would have those fixed up
Okay, thank you.
for painting. Mhm.
Alderman Borneman.
Since I spoke so much about it last time, I guess I'm obligated to give my opinion about these. I guess my preference would be to see these shared bike lane designated, the arrows with the bike throughout the city, throughout the downtown. The alternative 1 provides for larger sidewalks, which this is an accessibility project, so do you think that would be in furtherance of making the downtown more accessible to all populations?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
The sidewalks on alternate 1 are 12.5 feet,
Mhm.
whereas the current design is 11.5 feet.
Yeah.
The project is based on accessibility. We're adding, ADA ramps and things like that.
Mhm.
Would it be fair to say a larger sidewalk is more conducive to a more accessible sidewalk?
Well, I think that the 11.5 foot sidewalk would still be just as good for anyone to go down. I think having that extra designated space, although I know it doesn't seem necessary to everyone, it does make a big difference in getting people to feel more comfortable to bike in downtown areas and a little bit busier of areas. So I think having the designated bike lane really makes it accessible for multiple people, whether we have 12.5 or 11.5 foot sidewalks. I think either way they would still be accessible for any type of pedestrian, but and we would still, with either of those options, we would still have the ADA compliant ramps to get into businesses and all of that.
Thanks. I'm kind of with Alderperson Berberet in that I don't have a strong preference towards either one. I definitely see the benefits of both the alternatives over the current design plan. Does the staff have a recommendation between the two alternatives?
Yeah, if we were going to go away from the current design, it would be alternate 2 that we would like to keep as the option. So we have that designated bike lane in our downtown, and if this is something too that if it really does not work down the road, then we can expand the parking or expand the drive lane or whatever it is and repaint the roadways that it's shared. So I think starting with that designated bike lane and giving that a chance, I think could be really beneficial to the downtown.
The only thing that couldn't change is that 1 foot difference in the sidewalk. Alderman Berberet.
Director Hines, would the designated bike lane in alternate 2 be a place where motorized motorized wheelchairs go, or not?
For the designated bike lane, I'm to be honest, I'm not sure what the answer is.
'Cause
to
I mean, I
that.
see people on those all over town, and sometimes they're crossing major streets. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, or
Yes.
Mayor, I don't believe that motorized wheelchairs are allowed in the street. A lot of people are doing it because the sidewalks that we have are ADA accessible, or we don't have any sidewalks, and I think the police chief could probably address that issue.
It's correct. It's correct. They're not allowed on the roadway. But I agree with the manager on the reason that they are being ridden in the roadway. It's just not accessible in some spots to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Borneman.
What's the current, just to give us some context, the current size of the sidewalks downtown, the width?
Yep, the current sidewalks are 12 feet, park lanes are 9, and then drive lanes are 12.
Let's try to get this narrowed down just a little bit. Obviously, the city staff still wants to stick with the original plan, but I'm hearing from a lot of the council members that they would like to deviate from that and go to either one or two. Is that safe to say?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so now it's a question of which do you want to put forward, alternative one or alternative two?
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Busker?
Yeah, seeing as, option 2 is still giving us a half foot more, walkway space than we do currently have. I believe that, yeah, it's 11 and a half.
It would be
There's not-
reducing it by half of a foot.
It's not
Or, no, it's 12, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we'd be reducing, so, 6 inches, I don't think that's too much. I'm gonna make a motion just to move, option 2 ahead, if it doesn't get a second or whatever.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Shadle to adopt alternative number 2. So if that's your preference, then obviously you'll vote yes on that. If you would rather have 1, then you would vote no. So if there's no further discussion on that particular motion, Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll on the adoption of the alternative 2?
Borneman,
Aye.
Monroe,
Aye.
Ross, Parker,
No.
Busker,
Aye.
Shadle,
Aye.
Meissick,
Aye.
Berberay.
Aye.
Alternative 2 is selected 6-2.
Okay, so that passes there. That's what moves forward. Item number 17 is reports from department heads. Finance. Thank you. Director Hines?
I just had a few things to add. So first, we heard from FEMA recently that any day now, we should be hearing back about our pre-disaster mitigation grant. What that timeline actually means, I'm not entirely sure, but they did indicate some positivity in that, and so we're really hoping that we do hear back soon, and that we can move forward with that. We've gotten a lot of phone calls and questions more recently about just what's happening, because it's taken so much longer than we wanted it to. But we do think that we'll hear back relatively soon. And then I did want to say too that we applied for the FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant this year. We did not get identified or selected for further review, but there was no one within FEMA Region 5 that got selected for further review. It was mostly coastal states that ended up getting selected for that grant, but we still have a chance for the state's hazard mitigation grant program, which we would be applying for. We applied for the same amount with both grants, and it would be used for the same thing as the pre-disaster mitigation for the purchasing of properties and helping people relocate. And then secondly, we just finished a demolition of 447 South Locust this past weekend. So it's one of the properties that was recently bid out for demolition. It was very close, right behind the podiatrist on right off Locust and Main Street. And so we've already gotten interest from him in expanding his lot and taking that over. And so we'll be talking with the owner next door too to see if they want to split it, or if we just want to, if they don't want it at all, then we'll move forward with that. But they're working on a few of the other demolitions right now too. Thank you.
Can you share with the other grant that you got word on? Is that too early?
Which one?
The ComEd?
Randy was going to talk about that.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, then we'll move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Public Works.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are planning to start hydrant flushing the 11th. So from 11 o'clock to 7 in the morning, we'll be flushing at night. We'll continue that until the 17th. So that's planned for next week. Also, if you've been down Empire, Martin's been busy grinding Empire. They're moving along rapidly. I'm hoping they're going to be done with that by the end of the week, and then we should be seeing paving activity following that. I expect we'll be done by the end of the month. Lastly, we had some traffic management on West Street. If you've noticed, there's a large section there in the middle of the road that's blocked off. That is due to water main boring, so we'll be connecting our new water main through there within the next several days. So just keep an eye open for that. So that's all I've got, Your Honor.
Thank you. Fire Department.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to report out that some capital projects that we've been working on came to fruition over the week. Our defibrillators have arrived. Thank you very much for your support of purchasing them. Also, the air tank project that we embarked upon earlier this year, those tanks arrived and have been placed into service. Also, our ladder truck is currently out of service for some repairs, and we'll keep you posted on that. And then we're also proud to announce that firefighter Reese and firefighter Wazak will be returning from Fire Academy this week. So it'd be nice to have those folks back and staff in the vehicles. That's all I have to report this week.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, so just because the clerk's having a little harder time hearing, next time, if you can just.
Sorry.
There you go. Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to report, on Friday, we made a pretty significant arrest in relation to the May 20th shooting that happened in the 400 block of South Beaver. We had taken, our patrol division worked very, very hard to locate and take into an 18-year-old juvenile who was later charged with first-degree murder on that case. And just not our patrol division, but our detectives have been working nonstop on 2 separate murders, and it's good to see that this comes to light and to get into court. That being said, we did have a very nice, quiet 4th of July weekend, unlike a lot of other cities around the nation. So it was, I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Library.
Thank you, Mayor. Going to just take a minute to thank a former board member who did a lot for the library and was a huge advocate. Unfortunately, he passed away at the end of June, Jim Beanline, and he even mentioned in his obituary to make sure to support and donate to your local library. So we thank him for his years of service, and he has already been missed. So he is not a current board member. He is a former board member. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. IT? All right. And so that leaves us with the city manager report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Staff members met with representatives from the Redevelop Resources and Studio GWA today regarding a housing market study. This is for workforce related issues, and they're doing this for Stevenson County and Freeport in particular. The Black Hawk Hills Regional Planning Council is leading the discussion on this, and it includes organizations such as NICA, Greater Freeport Partnership, the Housing Authority, and the Township. And the study is being funded through the Freeport Community Foundation, along with several other regional local counties. It's more than just our area, but we're focusing right now on Freeport and Stevenson County. And as the mayor mentioned a few minutes ago, the city has been notified by ComEd that we are being awarded a $10,000 grant as part of their Green Region program for the pocket park we're planning on Stevenson Street. Andrea Winter of the Greater Freeport Partnership wrote the grant application on our behalf. The project is expected to cost $27,000, and we now have funding from not only ComEd, but also from the Freeport Realtors Association for an amount of $5,000, and the Northwest Illinois Community Foundation amount of $2,500. The remaining $9,500 at this time will be funded through a Department of Community and Economic Opportunity grant which State Senator Brian Stewart was able to secure for us for the rest of that project. And that's all I have for tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. And I just have a few things to add to your calendars for the council as well as the constituents. There is a multi-employer job fair that is going to be taking place next Thursday, July 15th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Farm Bureau on Spring Street. This is multi-employers coming into one location. It looks like it'll be 20-plus employers from everything from healthcare to service work to manufacturing. So if you know someone in need of a job, this is the place to go, a one-stop shop kind of job fair. Also, on your calendars, if you could mark the last Thursday of this month, which is July 29th, we will have our second Staff on the Street, which will be at the Wilbur Park at 5 p.m. Wilbur Park is a very quiet and very nice little park just north of McDonald's on Galena. It's at the corner of Warren and Elm. So if you can avail yourself to that for an hour, hour and a half, it's a great way for the community to get to know the staff as well as the aldermen and just to be able to share some thoughts and ideas. And then also coming up quickly is our electronic recycling event. It's for all of Stevenson County. It will be held on Saturday, August 21st. It starts at 9 a.m. until noon in, I'm sorry, at the Highland Community College parking lot B. You can bring anything from computers, monitors, televisions, printers, DVD players, that type of thing. What you cannot bring, what we had to turn away a lot last time, was radios. For some reason, they don't allow radios. So one piece that just doesn't get accepted. So, excuse me. The cost on this is $20 per vehicle. You can have as much as 7 items in your vehicle. So it doesn't matter if it's one thing or 7 things, it's $20. So that is Saturday, August 21st. So that's what I have to share with council tonight. And we will move on to Alderman Borneman. Do you have anything that you would like to share?
Thank you. I just want to say congratulations to the administration and the Greater Freeport Partnership for getting the Pocket Park. It sounds like it's completely grant funded, which would be a great part for downtown. A nice move towards a new look for downtown. And then also, thank you to the police department for making that arrest. I know from my time as a prosecutor how much work goes into those cases and those arrests and how much work the shift and especially the detective bureau puts in. So thank you for their work. And then lastly, this is more of just a comment. I don't need a response or anything, but the corner of West and Empire, northwest corner, I'm just hoping that something can be done about how the state is using that lot and that they appear to be using it to stockpile materials, and it's probably one of the biggest intersections in town, not biggest, but most frequented intersections of town, and it's just not a good look. So just wanted to raise that issue, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Monroe?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Ross?
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Parker?
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Busker?
Nothing more this week tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Shadle?
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate the issue with the state storing their stuff. I've seen that as well, and it's very unsightly for that intersection, especially. I don't know if we have any kind of contact with anybody that could be addressed, but the only other thing would be the 3 recognition of service awards are tremendous. 40 years, thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Misick?
Yeah, thanks. Wanted to say I appreciate the time to go back and look at this streetscape project and offer some alternatives. Hearing from the community on this, I think was helpful in those designs. So I'm grateful for this to come forward with the council. And thank you, Director, for the time to walk through that. that, as you had stated as well, if we find that something doesn't work, we can always repaint the lines at a later time. So that very fortunate, and thank you for bringing that forward. I also agree, it really, as we have different members serving the city, that to see that type of longevity is really great in the city, and those workers to dedicate their time, raise their families here. So I would certainly like to recognize each of those for their time and service in Freeport. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Berberay?
I'd agree with Alderman Mysek, and thank you, Director Hines, for taking your team back and listening to the business community. It's very important. They help us survive and grow in this community. It's important that we listen to them. Thank you.
That concludes council reports. Next is item number 21, which would be public comments. We have Alan, if you would like to come to the podium and state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Alan. Whoops, sorry. I'm Alan Nowicki. I live at 1545 West Demner Drive, and I'm here about an item that will come before the council at the next meeting, and that's the lot at 1601 South Park. And it's a beautiful lot. It's large, 6 acres. It's in a nice neighborhood. It's close to parks, recreation trails, and schools. And as part of the neighborhood, we're interested in seeing something very nice there and something that improves the neighborhood. The lot is not without difficulties, though. There's no sanitary sewer. There's no storm sewer. The existing roads that it's on are narrow and in poor condition, and the lot slopes strongly. It has a 20-foot drop from north to south towards Crape Park. The lot is the cause of stormwater problems in the neighborhood, by and large. I ask you to look carefully. Please consider the long-term impacts of development on this lot, on the neighbors and on the users of Crape Park. Unlike being able to just say, well, let's do something else and repaint the street, this is when we talk about the development of new streets and housing, we can't move houses back, we can't rechange roads, we can't easily make roads wider. Poor street designs, cutting corners on stormwater planning, mismatching with the neighborhood on densities and setbacks, those are all long-term problems that may take decades. Please consider the neighbors. Please reject the proposal to change the lot to an R5 zoning until there's a better design. Thank you. We're not against any development there. We just want it to fit in with the neighborhood and be a credit to Freeport.
Thank you. Tommy?
Matt Summers, I want to tell you, thank you for doing, you're going to find out about the witness of me and Joe and did that.
I'll look into it tomorrow.
And I want to talk, Chief, did you hear about the fire ambulance came and picked up that girl from Frida Home?
I'm not aware of that, but I wouldn't be able to speak to it if I did.
Yeah, I saw her when she scraped her on like this and then went to the hospital. The ambulance took her.
Well, I'm glad we were able to help her.
And we want to make sure Matt checked that out when.
We'll check it out tomorrow.
And want to tell Jody Miller there's going to be a picnic at Crape Park for Democrats on Saturday.
All right, thank you for telling me.
And want to tell Chris and Hines when they're going to have that bike pass.
Next year.
What about that old Eagle store by Lincoln Mall?
Someone's working on it.
Thank you, Tommy. Any other public comments? Then we will move on to item number 22, which is executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read this?
Which exemptions? Pardon me. Litigation when an action, pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion made by Alderman Busker, seconded by Alderman Parker. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Borneman.
Aye.
McClanathan. Oh, my goodness, where am I dragging this stuff up from? I'm so sorry. Monroe.
Aye.
Ross. Parker.
Aye.
Busker.
Aye.
Shadle.
Aye.
Misick.
Aye.
And Berberay.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.